Hey everybody, welcome to the Elkhart Tapes. I'm joined by a guy I really respect a lot, Mr. Dan Faulkner. How you doing? I'm going to call you Mr. Faulkner because you'll always be my teacher. How you doing?
Well, that's okay. I guess I can get used to that. If you'll let me call you Derek instead of Mr. Relaford,
that's fine. That's fine. So we were catching up a little bit before we got on here. You're now a superintendent in Hooker. How long you been doing that?
I've been here for 12 years, so I'm
12 years. So you're told. So we'll get into all that. I want to tell your whole story. Let's go back to the beginning. Where are you from? I'm guessing Oklahoma, but where are you from?
Yeah, I was I was born in Guyman, in a nursing home because they didn't have a hospital back in the 1800s. So I was born in a nursing home and ended up in Maud, Oklahoma, which is down by Shawnee. And I grew up in that area out in the country, old country school, Harjo, where I went to for grade school, and then to Maud for most of the rest of my school career till I was a senior and I moved out here and graduated from high school in Texoma. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I had an incredible band director, the best teacher I ever had, taught me, as far as I'm concerned, taught me everything I knew about working with kids and music. Yeah. In that 1 year, it was great. And then I went to college and ended up back out in this part of the world, in your neck of the woods.
So was it always like concert band stuff that you were into, or was there ever a period where you had longer hair and you played in a band? Or
Yeah, I did. When I was in college, I played in a rock band. We did dances at on weekends at Turner Falls, Oklahoma, out in the country in a dance pavilion that was kind of open and pretty cool place. I wasn't particularly great, but I did have a lot of fun.
What did you play?
I played keyboards then and guitar some, but too many other guys in the band played guitar and none of them played keyboards. So I had to step in and fill in there. I think you're probably familiar with that.
Yeah. So what was it about music that sort of caught on to you so early on that you stuck with it this long?
Well, I developed an interest in music in church, listening to the songs, picking out parts when I was probably in junior high, maybe a little bit younger. I started picking out harmony parts and singing harmony parts with them in church, and really loved doing that. And I wanted to be in band. We couldn't really afford for me to be in band. We couldn't afford to buy a horn or anything. But when I was in the 7th grade, sitting in my classroom one day, this senior boy came to the door and made an announcement to the kids in class. There was only one kid in band at the school that year, happened to be him. And the band director was a young guy who was really ambitious and wanted to do something. He said, even if you've never been in band, if you don't have a horn, we don't care. We'll teach you to play. So I thought I would get my trumpet that year and go out to the band room and talk to the band director, and he gave me a tuba. But I did learn to play it, and I learned to play it really well. and I found a place that I fit. I found a place that I belong, and it made all the difference in the world in my life. Nobody in my family had ever even graduated from high school, much less gone to college. And as by the time I was in the 8th grade, I wanted to make that kind of difference in other kids' lives. So I knew when I was in the 8th grade, I was going to be a band director. I was going to be a teacher.
Did you go straight into it right after college? Like you just stayed in the band room basically ever since until you got into like doing principal and superintendent?
Yeah, I did. We didn't have a lot of money, and back in those days, back in the 1800s, like I was talking earlier, there was no financial aid really for people like there is now. There is a lot of help for kids. If they really want to go, they can get some help. And so it took me 7 years to get through college because I had to work full-time jobs to get through. And when I finished college, I started in East Central in Ada, Oklahoma, and then I came out here to Panhandle State and finished up. And I went from Panhandle State to Balco, Oklahoma for 5 years, had a great experience there, worked with a lot of really terrific kids. Then went to Hugoton, Kansas for 5 years. And then from there and that was terrific too. The band grew from about 20 to over 80 kids. And then I went to Panhandle State and was taught band music classes at Panhandle State for 3 years, and then while I was there, I started taking administration classes, and then I went into administration. But I've been a junior high school principal for 10 years in Carnegie, Oklahoma, and I got a phone call from Clay Abla, who was the junior high school principal at Elkhart. He had been in my college band, and Clay called me up one night and he said, "Have you ever thought about going back to the classroom and being a band director again?" And I said, "I think about it all the time." And so he said, "Well, we need a band director in Elkhart." So I went to Elkhart and interviewed at Elkhart with Dr. Lutz, and that was how I got to Elkhart, America. Had an incredible time there. Wonderful kids. It was so much fun. And went ahead and became the high school principal a few years later. But
let's talk about that a little bit. So, like, you're a principal. Was it literally you just missed the band room, or like what was it about you because like I have to admit that has to be some kind of step back, isn't it? If you're like in administration and you go back to being a teacher, I don't know how it works, but
yeah, well, it's a step back financially. You know, I mean, you don't make as much money. I never thought of it that way at all in terms of my life, because I can promise you the whole time I was in Elkhart, when I went into the band room and worked with those kids every day, none of them had as much fun as I did during that period. It was a terrific experience. And yeah, you know, basically, I guess I'm going to have to say I prostituted myself for money and became an administrator because I realized that with 3 boys and them going to be in college some of these days, I needed to have a little bit more income. So,
did you? Because you definitely have your own way of doing things. People like you were a teacher that people remember. Obviously, like you had your own way of doing things. Did you going back into administration have anything to do with like wanting to be more influential on how the school like did things?
Actually, it had a huge impact on my decision to do that. As a school teacher, for years I watched and saw how things play out in schools, and I felt like that I had a broader vision maybe than some people did when they went into administration. Not wanting to sound arrogant or anything, but seeing the student body there as a whole, not just my band kids, but what school could do for all the kids there. And I wanted to make an impact on that. I felt like maybe I could have a positive impact on a whole school's building, like I've tried to have with the band class. And then that's one of the reasons why I became a superintendent, because I wanted to be able to have that kind of impact on the whole school district and have a really positive school, place where people love each other and get along. You know, that doesn't work 100% of the time, but you can make a difference like that, I believe. So, and kids are awesome, whether you're the superintendent or the principal or the band director.
Let me ask you this. Usually when you have a teacher, there's usually one or two ways they go. Like they either rule with an iron fist, or or it's a class that you have fun going to because you feel like you can get away with stuff. You were somewhere in the middle, because we never felt like you ruled with an iron fist, but we never really messed around because we respected you too much. Was that a conscious decision to like really show that you were giving students like a voice, like we weren't just a student and you were a teacher, like we were all people in the room? Was that a conscious decision, or is that just how you carry yourself?
It was part of my learning as a young teacher. When I first started out, I mean, the years when I was in high school, I mean, teachers ruled everything with an iron fist, and I started out trying to do that. And I realized the very first year I taught, I realized that all the kids in my classroom, even the ones who weren't just gung-ho and weren't the best musicians, all of them wanted to be part of something good. And anytime there was a problem, generally it wasn't something they were doing deliberately to cause a problem. It's just part of being a kid. And so I decided that maybe I should enjoy some of the nonsense right along with them, and sometimes laugh with them instead of getting mad at them and yelling at them or anything like that. I discovered as an administrator early on that yelling at kids is not a good thing to do. I had administrators who were like that. As a superintendent, I've had administrators who were like that, and I've had to calm them down and say, you know, treat these kids like people. They're people. They're younger, but they deserve to be treated with respect. And you can get way more done with adults or young people if you respect them.
Do you feel like you're doing more in there when you're a band instructor? Like, what's actually taking place? Like, are you just learning instruments, or are you starting a band? Like, what in your opinion, like, what's going on, like, when you have all that time with the students and everything?
Well, you develop a relationship with the kids and the music, because if you want the kids to progress, if you want them to become better, if you want them to really make progress, you have to challenge them. And in order to challenge them, sometimes I put things in front of them that were really, really difficult. And they had to believe enough in me that I would not put them in a position they're going to be embarrassed, that I do believe in them, that they can do that. And so I think it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. They play instruments, they read music, and they play the sounds and all of that. And I play the band. The band is my instrument. And as I listen to all those different parts and try to blend everything in a way that people who are listening actually feel something when they listen, that was always important to me. That we didn't just play pretty, that we played with feeling. And so lots of times I would paint pictures for the kids. You know, I'd say, this part here, just imagine this guy is outside his girlfriend's window and his heart's breaking and all of that. Or imagine that we've got a herd of buffalo running across the prairie here, and that's the kind of feeling we want to get. And it was just fun, and the kids respond to that. They get that feeling too, and you can see it on their faces when you finish playing. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Such a good feeling that when you finish and you've all done something together. That was extraordinary. Maybe it's not as good as the Philharmonic or something like that, but it's one of the best things they've heard from a small school band in their lives, and they were part of it. And
Yeah.
and I got to be part of it, and that's incredible. I wouldn't have done anything else with my life.
I think it's great. So I know that you there was a couple times you just like sprung stuff on us students that I would have let off with. We were sitting in class one day, fiddling around on the guitars, and we were talking about the Olympics, and you were like, "Oh, I sang it at like some Olympic event," and we were like, "What?" And then you brought in a VHS, and it's you in front of like 80,000 people, and you were very upset because they made you lip sync. You were like, you brought it up several times. You're like, "Now listen, guys, I'm not really singing. I'm pretty upset about it." But like, why don't you? Why isn't that something that you would just like tell everybody? Like it was like this big secret. Like why didn't you tell us, Mr. Faulkner?
Oh, uh, I don't like to make it sound like, I'm not interested in people thinking I'm great. I'm more interested in them thinking that the kids are awesome, and that the work the band's doing is awesome. And I don't want it to get in the way of my relationship with them or anything, um, but yeah, that was a great experience. And yes, I'm still ticked off that I had to lip sync.
I was talking to a buddy of mine. He was in a band that did really well, and he was I told that story the other day on a show because I was like, he was like, yeah, he's like, we'd show up to TV shows and they would tell you like 5 minutes before you're going on, like, oh yeah, you're not really playing, and I was like, wow. How did that all come about? Like, because I know that that's another thing we'll talk about here in a little bit. You have original music that you've written that turned out to be a hit in Elkhart, Kansas. As soon as everybody found out about it, everybody wanted to get a CD. How does like the Olympic Commission or whoever, first of all, who put that on, and how did you get that gig?
Okay, well, that's an interesting story, because when I was band director at Panhandle State, I wrote a song called "Oklahoma Is My Home," and made a recording of it, just a rough recording. It was real rough because I was playing piano, and I'm not a great piano player. But there's a contest in Oklahoma done by the Oklahoma Heritage Society called Songs of Oklahoma. And I entered the song in the Songs of Oklahoma songwriting contest. And I didn't win, but about 2 years later, after I had entered the song, I got a phone call in the summertime from a guy named Charles Jones. And Charles was a music director at a Church of Christ in Oklahoma City, a big church, great big church. And he was tasked with picking a piece of music to do for what Oklahoma calls their Summer Olympics, which is a high school sporting event, and in the summertime. And he had gone through the tapes from the Heritage Society and found my tape, and he said, I don't know why this song didn't win. It's obviously the best song in the box, but he said, I would like to record this song. He said, I don't have a lot of money. I really can't pay you much. You probably heard that before. But I will record it. He said, we're going to take it to a studio. We're going to do a really great job with it, a professional guy. But I don't need you to sing it, because we've got a guy in the city who's really a great singer, and he'll sing it. I don't know if he meant that I wasn't a great singer or what, but that was fine. I was just, I was honored that they liked the music. So he did record the song, and about a month later, I got a phone call from Charles Jones, rather terrified phone call, and he needed me to come to Oklahoma City to the studio and record the song, because the guy who was supposed to sing it got laryngitis and he couldn't sing, and nobody else knew the song. So I went to the city and did the song for the recording for the radio broadcast and all of that. And he said, but when we have the actual ceremony, we won't. We'll have the guy who was originally supposed to sing it. We'll have him sing it. But I was there, and when the music and everything started, their sound system blew up, and I don't know what happened, but he didn't get to sing the song. But in the course of all the other music I'd written. I was doing concerts, and a good friend of mine was doing sound for me as we traveled around. And we got a phone call from a guy we knew in Cimarron County, Boise City, Oklahoma. And he said, hey, we have Jimmy Webb is in concert here because of the real Olympic ceremonies, the 1989, is that right? 1989 Olympic opening ceremonies are going to be in Oklahoma that year. And so he said, we don't have a sound system that we can use for Jimmy Webb's concert. So could you and Rick come out and do the sound for our concert for Jimmy Webb? And because Jimmy Webb had written the theme song for the Olympic ceremonies that year.
Okay.
And so Rick said, I'll tell you what, we will come out and do sound for the opening, for that ceremony when they bring the torch across the state line into Cimarron County. We'll come and do that concert if you'll let Dan do the opening concert for Jimmy Webb. So they said, okay, sure, we'll do that. And so I'm on the football field in Boise City, America, and did the opening concert for Jimmy Webb. And all the Olympic people are there. There's a guy named Kareem, who was the videographer for the Olympics, for the whole thing that year. And Kareem was videoing and listening to everything. And he went to a guy named Lee Allen Smith, who was the big boss of all of that, the guy in charge of the $5 million they spent on the opening ceremonies. And he said, hey, you need to have this song in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. And played it for him. And he said, yeah, we want to put this song in the opening ceremony of the Olympics. And it was at Owen Field in Norman. But Lee Allen Smith said, we'd like to use your song. And they sent it to New York. They sent the 2-inch reel to New York and had had a chorus added to it and that kind of thing. And but we'll get someone else to sing it, somebody that's whose name is known and all that. So they shopped the song out to some of the other people who were singing there. The Oak Ridge Boys were singing, Reba McEntire, a bunch of really well-known people. And everybody that they talked to said, there's nothing wrong with this guy. Why don't you let him sing it? He wrote the song, so you let him sing it. So they called me and said, would you be willing to sing it at the opening ceremonies for 40,000+ people? And Ronald Reagan and Bob Hope were there and spoke at it. All kinds of other famous people. It was quite an experience. And so I did. Got to do a couple of morning TV shows, but they did when I got there. They said, Lee Allen said, "Look, we're spending $5 million on this show. We can't afford for somebody to get in the lights with all those people there and make a mistake. So you're going to be lip syncing." At least I did get to sing it. I mean, they did use my recording, but it was an amazing experience.
Did they tell you that, like, how quickly before? I mean, how much time was there before you went on stage and they told you you're not really playing?
Oh, they told me at the rehearsal the week before.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew a week before that, and they had given everybody a candle and a cup, and people said, "Well, weren't you really terrified? 40,000 people there," and I said, "No, I wasn't, because the music started. There was a 120 or 30 voice choir behind me singing. And I was standing there alone on the stage in front of all those people. But they turned the lights off and everybody lit their candles, and people were just swaying back and forth in time with the music. And it was just like being at home with your family.
Yeah.
It was an awesome feeling, and a great experience. I loved it.
Well, like that's the whole experience. Like, it's cool that you got to play there, but like the fact that, you know, you got to go to an actual recording studio, you know, like your song got shipped off to New York where they did stuff. I mean, that's a lot of people would do a lot of things for somebody just to listen to their song once. You know, this song got a lot of
Yeah.
life out of it.
It got a lot of attention, and I did concerts for the Olympics all around the state. As the torch moved around the state, there were 3 or 4 different places that I got to go to and do whole concerts where I sang more than just that song of the stuff I had written. But and that's how I got hooked up with the studio and learned about recording, learn more about recording, because I was dangerously unknowledgeable about recording. I thought I knew something about it, but boy, I didn't.
So is that like a muscle that you exercise often? Like to this day, are you still like writing little ditties and writing lyrics and stuff, or not really?
No, I still write. I still write. I write mostly Christian music, and I write mostly things that I hope are encouraging to people. I don't write a lot of songs about how great God is. I write a lot of songs about how great God is to me, and how important God is to me, and how He comforts and cares for me, rather than talking about Him as the master of the universe and that kind of thing.
Is faith something that you were taught, or is that something that you grew into?
I grew up in church, but I don't think. I think that it's something that I learned how to do later in my life. That I learned more about. I'm not, I'm getting a lot of trouble for this, but maybe the right people won't hear it. So, but I'm not really. I'm not really enthralled with church as much as I am with the reality of who God is and what He can do for people. Because church, so many times in my experience, church kind of just points the wrong direction.
Yeah, it can, you know, anytime you involve people with a good message, you know, it can get messy in the translation. Yeah, I've gotten, you know, I'm 37 now, and I was raised Christian, and in my 20s I was kind of angry and confused. Now I was talking to my wife about it because she was raised. She calls it a cult. Like it's actually if you Google it, it's a cult. But it was Christianity, but it was a different brand of it. But I was telling her that I was doing something for a podcast I'm working on, and basically I found out that I'm really good friends with a scriptwriter, and I didn't know that. I've been friends with him for like 6 months now, and I was like, that to me, that's proof to me that there's a God. She was like, explain that. But to me, like that's how I can describe God, is like little like connections between us and stuff, like positive. I don't know. I think it's important to believe in something, you know, like be pretty depressed if you didn't.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know how to explain being told that I'm not going to sing the song. And then I had to sing the song. And then I wasn't going to sing the song, and their sound system shut down on them. And then we're going to use your song, but we don't want you to sing your song. But then I had to sing the song. You know, I don't know how all those little pieces fit together if you don't feel like there's a bigger power at work in things.
Yeah, somebody having fun with us, leading us around on these little paths. So, at what age did you get married? Because you've been married for a while. You have. We'll get into that. What age did you get married?
Oh, I got married. I married my first wife when I was 18.
Oh, okay. So you got married real young.
Yeah. And then Melissa and I got married when I was 38. So
38. Okay.
So I knew what I was doing then.
Yeah.
At least I thought I did.
Yeah. Right. Did you have children in your first marriage?
I had 2 girls.
Two girls. Okay. What was I guess what are some things you picked up from your old man that you noticed right away about yourself that you sort of resembled him in being a father?
Ooh, I didn't have a great relationship with my dad.
Okay.
Some of the things that I picked, one of the things that I picked up from him that I will always be grateful for is a work ethic. He was a hard worker. He went to work, whether he was well, whether he was sick, it didn't matter. He worked and he worked hard, and he was honest as the day is long.
Mhm.
But he was pretty brutal to my mom and me, and so I learned. I did pick up his temper too, as I was growing up. So I have to watch that because even as old as I am now, occasionally I will catch myself and think, "Oh gosh, you're acting like your dad. Don't do that."
Yeah.
But he was a good man as he knew how to be. But he grew up rough. His mother died young. His dad was way worse than he was to him
Yeah.
to him than he was to me. And so I loved him, and I that's another thing that I think God took away any of the bitterness I might have had over things when I was younger. And I never resented him or hated him or anything like that. I felt bad for him because a bunch of people loved him, and he just kept pushing people away.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty much the exact opposite of that. I just about love everybody, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of that's just time, like you said, he didn't have it great growing up. And a lot of times I think bad fathers produce really good fathers. I like to think that I'm a good father. I've only spent like 2 days away from my children ever, and there's one of them 6. I've been putting my time in and stuff. But yeah, I'm like, I didn't get along with my father. He kind of, well, actually, it was crazy. Is we got along great, but he treats me like a friend, not like a son. So that's a whole nother therapy session. Though I'll leave you out of that.
Yeah, be with those kids because that time just gone so quickly.
Yeah, because you had little kids whenever you were in Elkhart, like they were pretty little.
Yeah, they were. Melissa and I had 3 boys, and they were all 3. Were they? Jonathan was a junior high, wasn't he? Or he was still in the 6th grade when we went there. 4th grade. Wow. Yeah. Drew wasn't even in school. Our youngest wasn't even in school yet, and Jonathan and Josh were both in grade school, and so they. Josh, the youngest one is a band director, assistant band director, with my middle one, Josh, who is band director in Newkirk, Oklahoma, and his wife is the vocal teacher in Newkirk. So when we go to things at Newkirk and somebody says Mr. Faulkner or Mrs. Faulkner, we both look because we think they're talking to us. But Elkhart and the whole thing with the band was great for them. I think they got their love for music out of that time we spent in Elkhart. And you'd always find Josh and Drew and Jonathan. They were always up there in the band.
Do you okay? So you have a kid that comes into band, and he has trouble counting to 4. Not really, but like not a lot of rhythm. Because my question is whenever you're teaching somebody how to play an instrument, I don't really have the patience for it. I've been playing guitar for 20 years, so if they don't pick it up pretty quick, I'm like, go away. But like, does somebody have to have that natural born ability to be musical, or do you feel like you can teach through that?
As a general rule, you can teach through that. I will say in my whole life, I've had 1 or 2 people that just did not get it. But I think those people had other problems too. I'm not sure. But music is such a natural thing, and rhythm is such a natural thing that most people, even if they have a little trouble understanding what's going on at first, you can find ways to get it through to them, get it across to them. And especially with beginners, as you work with them, you start to see the light come on, and they're starting to understand, and they're starting to get it. It's kind of like trying to start a fire, and you get just a little spark, and next thing you know, you've got a fire burning there, and you have kids who are really really in love with what they do. There are always kids that it's just a different part of their life. There are kids that it's a social thing for. Sometimes there's a guy in there because his girlfriend is in band, and he wants to have as many classes with her as he can, or vice versa. But those kids are important too, because everybody can't be a virtuoso. You need all those kids to make the band work. So you don't look down on those kids. You don't treat them any differently. You need third chair trumpet players just like you need first chair trumpet players, and they all contribute their part and their place in that.
Knowing what you know musically and being trained as you are, do you get bummed out whenever you're starting with a class and like the first few weeks sounds like a guitar center, everybody playing out of tune, and do you ever because that doesn't sound good, and it out of everybody in the room, you're like, this isn't good. Like, what goes through your head whenever it's just bad?
Yeah, you look for little points of light and all of that stuff is going on. I had when I first started teaching, the band room was off by itself in another building right close to the high school at Balco. And the superintendent, there was a ramp coming down into the room, and the superintendent started down the ramp. I was in 5th grade band, beginning band class. He started down the ramp into the classroom, and he got about halfway and turned around and went back out. And later on, he said, "There's not enough money in the world to make me do that." So yeah, the first little while is tough, and as the kid, they don't just learn from you, they learn from each other. Yeah. But the first days when you have clarinets and saxophones and trumpets and trombones and you're trying to they don't even know how to hold the instrument, they don't know how to put it together, so you spend a lot of time, and you do have to be patient. My mother didn't believe I could do that, and until she watched one day. She said, "I would have called anybody a liar if they had told me you could be that patient with kids." But when you are doing that with them, you know where they're headed. You know what's going to happen down the line. So you are patient with them, and they're trying really hard. It's not like they're not trying. But playing a musical instrument is not easy. Some of them are harder than others. And anybody can honk on a saxophone, but it takes real patience to be a flute player. Yeah. Because it's difficult to make a sound on a flute. And it's something you don't listen to it while you're doing that part. You just try to get them pointed in the same direction, and after about a month or so, then you start really listening and getting them to listen and all that. Once they kind of get the mechanics under their fingers and their lips. But it doesn't sound pretty, and the parents complain about it. I had the first year I taught school, I made kids do practice sheets, and the parents had to sign their practice sheets. And I had a kid who was not doing well at all. It was obvious to me that he wasn't practicing, but he was bringing me this practice sheet that was all filled out with all this time he was practicing. And I asked him, and he said, "My dad told me he'll sign anything as long as I don't play this horn at home."
Yeah, my kid wants to play drums, so we got that coming.
Oh yeah, yeah. That'll keep you awake at night.
How often do you get the kid that's obviously there because he thinks you're going to teach him how to be a rock star?
That's one of the hardest things about drums and guitar, of course, because guitar, it's easy to play guitar a little bit. Mm-hmm. it's not easy to be a good guitarist, and it's hard work. And so you see that happen with, especially if you have kids who say, dad wants him to play guitar or mom wants him to play guitar. And you see the kid as his fingers start to hurt, and he realizes he can't reach some of those chords, and you're teaching him short versions of chords to try and get him playing something and all that. And you see some kids who obviously lose interest fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. And then you see some who really they're really motivated by the sounds they hear, and those are awesome. They're certainly not every kid. And drums are the same way, because every kid who starts to play drums sees himself behind a trap set going crazy and playing really wild rock and roll stuff. Well, that's hard too. It takes an incredible amount of coordination to work both hands and both feet while you're and you're all over the place on the trap set. And kids aren't patient about that. You have to teach them some basics before they can do that, before they can get on there and actually do anything that sounds like rock music. Yeah. Sounds like rock and roll. And then in band, if they can't do rock and roll in band all the time, but in band, the poor drummers sit there and count for extended periods of time before they have to come in some place. You have this really nice, pretty chorale going on here with no drums at all. Goes on for 25 or 30 measures, and the drummers are sitting back there. Typically, they're sitting back there getting in trouble. They're throwing drumsticks at each other and that kind of thing. But and then their time to come in happens, and then you have a kid who has to play cymbals because someone's got to do it, and they sit there and wait till the end of the piece, and they're just sitting there with the cymbals up ready to go, and they're watching for you to point at them, and you do it, and sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. Most of the time they do, and it's awesome because that's important too. Mm-hmm. Percussion is like the frosting on a cake for concert music.
Yeah. What do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy like putting on a concert, or just whenever you're maybe out on the field marching, or just when you're in the stands with everybody having a good time providing the soundtrack?
I like working with the kids. I like playing with the kids. I still play with the band at football and basketball games like I did at Elkhart. Even after I became a principal, mm-hmm. I still played with the band at all the home ball games. And I still do that because I enjoy it, and I like being around the kids, and I still get to do some teaching. Because the kid sitting behind me is playing some wrong notes, I can say, hey, this it'll sound better if you do this. Take my word for it. It'll sound better. And so I still enjoy that. I enjoy playing. I enjoy conducting the kids. I enjoy working through the music with them. Typically, and this happened at Elkhart too, typically you pass out a new piece of music, especially concert music, if it's something they don't know, that's not pop music of some kind. They don't like it because it doesn't sound good. Well, it doesn't sound good because they don't know how to play it yet. And so you talk to them about being patient. This is gonna be great. You're going to. And typically, by the time you're done with it and you're ready to play it at a concert, it's one of their favorite things to play. But a month ago, they didn't even think they'd ever be able to, and that's awesome.
Karen Thrall wanted me to ask you if she put together a big Elkhart, Kansas reunion concert, if you would be a part of it.
Yes, I would.
I told her you probably would.
If I could at all, I absolutely would be part of it. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Bad time for with the pandemic going on now. Are you guys? Is this school year completely crazy for you guys too? With the pandemic, my kids homeschooling basically because of it.
Yeah. Well, I will put it this way. It's crazy for the administration because we are breaking our backs to try and make it normal for the kids.
Yeah.
When we're having school every day. We don't have AB. We're having our football games. Our cross country team is headed for state cross country meet this week, and so we're working with the county health department. They get anytime anyone tests positive for COVID, they notify us if there's any connection to the school. So we have people we quarantine. We don't quarantine. We haven't been in a position yet where we've had to quarantine a whole class. And so we've quarantined a few kids from contact. We've had one or two younger kids who've actually had COVID and they've recovered and they're back in school. They weren't exposed to school. Their grandmother had it and she's recovered and she's fine. Yeah. So it's a kind of a daily fight, but what our goal is to have school every day, to have band, to have choir. The things we aren't doing, we're not having concerts, indoor concerts. We're doing as much outdoors as we can. We'll have a new challenge facing us in about a month when basketball season starts, and we're going to have to go inside. We'll have to work through that, but our goal is to try and not make the kids have to go home and do this like we did in March and April and May of last year, because that was a bad experience for everybody. Yeah. And so things have, and I'm just thrilled. The kids have been great. The parents have been awesome. I've had to go round and round with a couple of people over whether, we're wearing masks. The older kids are wearing masks. And we have had a few people who thought that wasn't necessary. I'm one who I don't necessarily think it's that effective to wear a mask, for everybody to wear a mask and social distance. However, I feel like it's important to do it in order to try and maintain that normal school year that we're working toward. And so in August, I would have never given us a chance of being this far without having to go home for a week or 2 weeks. Yeah. But our take on it, our philosophical take on it, or medical take on it, whatever, with all the medical expertise we have here, is that if we go home for a week or we go home for 2 weeks, when we come back to school, the virus is still here. It's still there. We're not going to get away from it by staying home for 2 weeks. So we're working to try and control things the best we can.
Well, and me and Rob Wilson, I do a show with Rob Wilson, and we talked about it quite a bit. That he's a football coach, and it's not just like it's not just sports. It's things like band, it's things like choir. But some kids go to school for those extracurricular activities. That's really the only reason they go every day. But they go for the rest of the day also. But that's their driving force. And wow. Two, like these people that are doing these extracurricular activities. If you take that all away, that just opens up a whole world of free time and idle hands. And that's not a great thing for a young person that's, trying to stay active and on goal to what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and if you apply some common sense to this whole situation, if you send people home, the older people they're not going to stay home. They're not going to stay separate. They're not going to quarantine themselves and go to the bedroom and lock the door so the virus can't get in. They're going to be out there with their friends. They're going to get together. They're still going to have contact with people. And so we don't, we're looking at it from our point of view. We don't think they're any less safe at school than they are if we just send them home to their own, yeah. I can't think of the word, but I know there's a word for what I want to say.
You had you had mentioned that you might retire at some point in the future. If it is going to be soon, Do you feel like this is another one of those times where God is showing that he's one, real, and two, has a sense of humor, making Dan Faulkner's last year really, really different than any other school year he's ever taught?
You could, it's like you've been reading my mind. That's a conversation I've had with God myself.
Really? It's like, really, God?
Is this really how you wanted us to go out here? Yeah, I think he does have a sense of humor. If and at the same time, uh, I realize that the virus itself is a serious thing, but I do believe we have overreacted to it.
Yeah.
I think we should have put all the old folks like me, locked them up in a room someplace, and let the kids go to school. And so I hate what this has done to our young people, almost more than anything else. They will never get this time back. Last year, when the day that Oklahoma shut down, the day the governor said no more school, no more activities, that day we had driven to Oklahoma City for the state basketball playoffs because our team was ranked number 1 or 2 in the state last year. We had a really good shot at winning the state basketball championship. The first day, before they had an opportunity to play a game or anything, they had to come home. Our ag kids, the kids who show animals, were in Oklahoma City for OYE, the Oklahoma Youth Expo, ready to show their animals at the biggest show of the year for them. And our cross country kids were ready to go to state not cross country, but track. And our choir, Melissa retired this year. She's a woman of leisure now, just laying around the house doing nothing. She won't throw anything at me while we're talking, I'm pretty sure. But the things that the kids missed out on are life experiences that those kids can never get back.
And then you got to take any senior, like that was going to be their last football games of their life, probably, because not a lot of adults play football after high school, like they don't have a lot of
college either. It's just it was all the experiences that they lost out on they can just look back on that and wish they'd had the opportunity to do it. And at that time, there were 2 cases of COVID in Oklahoma. I think we probably could have survived a few state competitions.
Well, we've been here we have about 5 minutes left. If you did retire, what does retirement look like for you? Like, what kind of stuff what do you want to get done when you retire?
Well, we talked earlier about the fact that I write, and I being a superintendent is it's a time-consuming job. It takes it. I was looking at I'm supposed to have 3 weeks a year of vacation time. I have 95 days since I've been here that of vacation time that I did not take because there are things I can't really afford to leave. There are things that I have to do that only I can do. And so I've written a lot of music and I know how all of it goes. I've got lyrics written down. I've got chords written down, and a lot of it I've made basic recordings of. So I intend to catalog everything I've written and record the things I think are worth recording, and then I want to do some traveling. I love Utah. It's beautiful. I want to go to Utah and spend some quality time, like 2 weeks in Zion Canyon or something, in Zion National Park, rather than driving by on a quick vacation jaunt, and do some of that. But with Josh and Riley, my middle one, Jonathan, our oldest one. He's a networking he's a networking technician and really very good at what he does. And he's not married, and our youngest one, Drew's not married. And so Josh and his wife have a little girl that's just a little over a year old, and she's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And she's his wife is pregnant and again, and going to have another one at the end of December or early in January. So we want to get some quality time with the grandkids too.
And I'm guessing whenever your family's all together and stuff, there's a lot of guitars and.
Yeah. Drew was the youngest one. Drew was a guitar major in college, and he's a really excellent guitar player. And so he played. I love to listen to him play, and I like to try to play with him, but he's better than I am by a lot. And Josh is a drummer, so he doesn't carry his trap set around with him, but he does play a cajon. Yeah, he plays a cajon, so we have rhythm going with that sometimes. It works really well.
So I guess my final question for you, and I really appreciate you doing the show. So Clay Abla calls you, tells you to come to Elkhart. You blow into town, you set up shop. What did you how did you enjoy living in Elkhart, and what were some things that you enjoyed about it, and then what are some things that you wish were different?
We enjoyed living in Elkhart. One of the things we didn't like about it was hard to find at that point in time. I think now you could probably find a place to live there, but at that time we weren't in a position to buy a house, and there was almost no place to rent. And so we rented one of the Baptist churches in town up on the highway, just off the highway in town. We rented their parsonage because their pastor owned a house, so that was going to be safe, Well, along about Christmas time, he got called to the mission field, and he left town, went to England to be a missionary. And so they had to hire a new pastor, and they needed their parsonage back. So we had to move, and we moved into a house that they wanted to sell to us, and they were really, really, we couldn't talk them into a decent price on it. So we lived in that house for 6 months, and then we moved into a house we called the Cat House, and I because whoever lived there before us had a bunch of cats, and it was awful. And then we moved into the not parsonage, but the superintendent's house, because Scott Myers had his own house. And then we finally bought a house out on Sunset of our own. So while we were there, we moved 5 times. That was something I did not enjoy at all about Elkhart, but I love the people there. I still love the people there. I met some of the greatest people, and my kids, the band kids, I get to see them every once in a while and talk to them. Fernando Escalera calls me a couple of times a year, and we visit, and I keep up with some of them on Facebook. I'm kind of a lurker on Facebook. I don't post a lot, but I do like to read about what's happening in the lives of the kids that I had in school. And to me, they will always, no matter how old they get, they'll always be my kids. Just like you, you'll always be one of my kids.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I put in the post whenever I had dropped out of school because it just wasn't working out for me, and I was really kind of expecting you to lay into me, but you were just like, "It's fine." You're like, "You'll be fine. Just go to the alternative school, get your diploma there, and you'll be fine." Like you didn't, and I really appreciated that because I needed to hear that day because it was a rough day.
Yeah, well, it was a rough day when you came to see me, and I appreciated the courage that it took for you to come to my office and talk to me about it, because a lot of kids would have just said I quit and that would have been it. but you had enough, and you and I had been through some, we'd talked and we had tried to work through some stuff to help you stay in school and everything. And I knew how discouraged you were. And I didn't, it broke my heart for you to quit because your heart was broken that you felt like you needed to.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I needed to pile on that. Besides, as much as I appreciate education and I love it, and I believe in what it does for people, there's more than one kind of education. And I was thrilled that you went to the alternative school, and I still got to give you a diploma anyway. So.
Yeah, I think looking back, because I talked about my dad with it, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. So when I was in high school, I was thinking about ways that I could die and things that could happen. So that I like looking back, like I think that my main and the thing is I didn't know how to convey that. Like you had tried to talk to me. I just didn't know how to explain that while the teacher was talking, I was thinking about terrible things, just like things that could possibly go wrong. But yeah, I did go to the alternative school, and things worked out. Look, I have my own radio show, Mr. Faulkner. It worked out.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you doing this show so much.
Yeah, I got to be on it. That's amazing. And I have I've lurked and kept up a little bit with you on Facebook, and I've seen some of the things you've been doing for several years now, quite a few years now, and so I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done, and so all of that has just blessed my heart, and my life has been amazingly blessed because of the kids that I had in it. I wouldn't want to do anything else. So I guess I got to do what made me feel like I have treasure in my life. I got treasure stored away in Elkhart. I got some treasure in Boise City. I got some treasure here in Hooker. Everywhere I've been, I've got some treasure stored away in the lives of the kids that I got to be part of.
Well, we all appreciate you, man. I promise. A lot of people were really excited about this interview. But I will let you get to bed. You got a lot of messes to clean up tomorrow when you get to work.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you, Derek. It was awesome visiting with you.
Okay, awesome. We'll see y'all later. Thanks for watching, and take care. See you later, Mr. Faulkner.
Bye-bye.
Well, I don't think and I thought it, that's different. I said what I said and I meant it, or lamented. Words given weight without thought in a person, the way that I talk and the way that I ought to be able to pause and to say that the fault can be placed on my arms, and this playful assault to disgrace in its arm. Pray for the day they could wait for the calm. You can't control the storm, only weather it, whether it's 5 weeks and 5 days of rain sideways, or scorched earth, search for death or water, left with all the thorns, with the petals gone, settle on the breath of autumn. If the ground fits, wear it, the crown fits.